Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 183rd edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Wellings, and I'm joined this evening by Andy, Dave, and Mr. Paul Webb. It's quite a light weekend of boxing, but we have a heavyweight panel to help you through the latest comings and goings in the boxing world. We're going to talk about Brook and Vargas, obviously, which is the topic on everybody's lips at the moment. But before we do, I'm going to actually ask Dave Lowback to just jump in there about a show he was at last night. Dave, I believe over in Reading, Pennsylvania, Mr. Jamel Herring was upset by Denis Sharakov. You were ringside for $20, had a good night's action. Do you want to just briefly tell us exactly what went down?
Well, yeah, the venue was undersold, I would say. The tickets were cheap enough that you'd expect a lot more locals to turn out, but it was only by about the fourth fight in, over the loudspeaker, they started begging everybody to move down to the first 10 rows so it would look good on TV. As far as the fights, I think it was a well-stacked card for the area. They had a bunch of local guys to get the crowd into it before and after the televised event. On the undercard, there was a kid named Patrick Zymanski, a Polish kid. He's only 23 years old. He faced Wilkie Camfort, who we most notably saw get destroyed by Jermall Charlo, the better Charlo, in my opinion. He folded like wet paper in that fight. But he gave Zymanski a good go. I think this kid has a lot of potential, good movement, head movement and foot movement, nicely dictated range, had a little bit of a gut check and learning fight last night. So keep your eye out for Patrick Zymanski. Kermit Cintron also fought on the undercard. He's actually from Reading, PA, so everybody there was for him. Why he's still fighting, I guess it's what he does. But, you know, somebody mentioned to me last night on Twitter while I was there, Margarito trilogy. And at this point, I would honestly probably favor Cintron. I mean, we saw Margarito's last fight in there with like what could be charitably described as a journeyman, and he got
the
dropped.
fun fight level, Dave.
It was fun, yeah. But, I mean, he went life and death with the guy, and, you know, Cintron still got enough about him, I think, to at least it would be probably a decent fight if they made that fight. But my instincts is they're going to probably like feed Cintron to somebody like Austin Trout or something, just to have him rebound. Because the guy, his nerves are shot. I mean, he could have got that guy out of there if he would land good big shots and then he would run in for a hug. Sometimes he would get tagged with like a little tap and he would run in for a hug. He was very, very cautious and not particularly fast either. But he did win clearly, won probably every round. And then the main event, of course, this is the event that got the big push from the media. All day on ESPN, I saw that they were promoting this Jamel Herring story because he's a former Marine. It's a good story, you know, 4th of July weekend coming up. So they were trying to like promote the patriotic angle there, and it would have been a huge win for Mr. Herring if he could have pulled it off against Shafikov, because Shafikov has twice mixed at world level, lost both times. Now, I know in the UK that means he is world level. I don't know about that, but he did do pretty well against Miguel Vasquez, and he did very well against Jamel Herring. But Herring, honestly, this is the first time I've seen him, and I don't know how he's gotten this far. I mean, I guess the Heyman hype train certainly got ground to a halt last night. He has no defense. His reflexes aren't bad, but his head is straight up in the air. He doesn't move well. He gets hit constantly by flush shots, even these wide looping shots that Shafikov was throwing. And his punch technique is all over the place. He doesn't seem to know what exact style he wants to be. Like he kept trying to keep it on the outside with the jab and the straight, but he was much more effective on the inside. Not saying he was effective at all, because he didn't win any rounds before getting knocked down and then finally stopped in the final round. It was really a mercy stoppage after a prolonged beat down. So yeah, the kid has heart and he's in good shape, but he's really lacks boxing education. His punch technique's all over the place. Like I said, looks like a guy who just watched the Rocky movies a bunch of times and said, "Yeah, I think I'll be the next Apollo Creed. Looks easy enough." And just he went in there and just like he jabs like he's underwater. It's bad. But Shafikov looked good. Abel Sanchez looked happy to finally get a win in his column that wasn't from Golovkin. What I don't understand, though, I mean, I know that Jamel Herring has this Marine story going for him. He has that unbeaten record. He was an Olympian. But on the undercard, there was this guy, Stephen Fulton from Philadelphia. He was against a much lower level opponent than Shafikov, obviously, but you could just tell he was so much better educated. He's a bantamweight. He has crisp shots, good defense, good movement. He's very slick. This is the guy who should be getting the push. This guy should be on TV. Stephen Fulton, keep your eye on him. He's not great. He's not done anything great yet. He's not fought anybody great, but I mean, he's way better than Jamel Herring, and yet Jamel Herring was the guy who was headlining the card. So I don't know. Could do with a little bit better decisions on what you decide to broadcast, Al.
Yeah, Dave, just feel free or feel lucky actually that you actually were at the arena, because I was left watching on ESPN, and that means Teddy Atlas. Now, I didn't usually mind Teddy Atlas myself, but last night he reminded me of Thrush, an absolute irritating cunt. Honest to God, he spends like most of the round just talking absolute gibberish, and they even calling the actual fight itself. So it's just But that said, it was okay. It was okay, I suppose. I mean, Shavakov, I would probably say he's more like a journeyman or something. Not journeyman, but probably a gatekeeper. Just no good enough just to get to that, world level, so to speak, or get a world title maybe. But as you said, Dave, he was that Herring was actually, as you say, he was upright. Just couldn't take the looping shots. I think it was the left hand as well. So it was an okay fight, I suppose, but like you, I don't know why he's getting this big push. I mean, he's got a good backstory, obviously. 2 tours of Iraq. They even mentioned about him losing his baby daughter. I think it was 2 months old or something like that. So he's obviously got that good backstory, someone to try and get a push in that, but ultimately he just kind of fell short at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, he's already 30 years old, so I don't know what hope there is for him. I was rooting for him because I did like his story, and he served the country and seems like an okay guy. But if you're not good enough, you're not good enough, and he was nowhere near good enough to beat even Denis Shafikov.
Right, any more over the weekend's action? Anything that we've missed? Anything we should be picking up on? Any of the three guys, if you want to jump in now, and if not, we can move on to the Brook Vargas situation.
Tepper's back tonight. Erkin Tepper. Wonder how fucking juiced the girls that cunt is tonight.
Who's he fighting again, did you say?
Derek Rossi, I think it is.
Rossi isn't
Rossi,
terrible, though. Rossi's alright. I mean, sometimes it depends on which version of him you get.
Derek Rossi, former prize fighter, entrant there, guys. Right, let's get down to the meat of it here. As we say, there wasn't too much going on over the weekend, so we haven't got a lot to discuss. So we're going to move straight on to the main talking points in boxing at the moment. We're going to start with this Kell Brook Jesse Vargas fight, or is it even going to be a fight at the moment? I mean, you've got the article up in front of me there. Things seem to be just be falling apart. I mean, at first we heard it was going to be made for August. Then we heard it was going to be September. Now Eddie's looking to push it back to October. Seems that Jesse Vargas has his side of the bargain sorted out. He seems to have signed his contract, and the issues lie with Kell Brook sorting out his end of the deal. Paul, just straight to the matter, really. I mean, is this fight going to happen between Brook and Vargas? And if not, why not?
I think ultimately it will. I think it's just obviously because of the Triple G Eubank fight. I think Matchroom have had to really evaluate how they're going to do the pay-per-view, what dates they're going to do the pay-per-view on. A couple of the guys from up in Sheffield that we know who keep a close eye on the goings-on at Bramall Lane and potential dates for a fight seem to say that there isn't an obvious one that stands out. So if they've worked out the money on the basis they're going to do it in a football ground and they're now going to have to switch it to the arena, it may well mean that the hold-up is due to a slight money difference. I think that it's not Vargas necessarily that's the problem. I don't think it's her necessarily that's the problem. I think it looks like it's Brook that seems to be holding out either for more money or for what, I'm not quite sure. I think Kell Brook really needs to understand that he's getting another world champion to come to his country with all the odds stacked against you that can often prevail. And Vargas seems to have not complained. He seems to just get on with it. And I think sometimes you have to accept you might get the short money in comparison. I think it's a fight that I'm wondering if Eddie's looking at the numbers and going, how big a pay-per-view is this, especially as they're going to have another pay-per-view potentially 4 weeks earlier or just over 4 weeks earlier, and then another one directly after with Joshua's next fight. So it's just purely a money thing. And then I'll be honest, I've joined in. I think it has been quite funny, but this, quite pathetic. Oh, you sign, no, you sign, no, you're ducking, no, you're ducking. You don't want the fight, you bitch. You don't want the fight, the bitch. It's just like it's like two little 6-year-olds really arguing over who gets to use a crayon. So hopefully, Matchroom and Eddie Hearn started off last week saying 2 big fights to nail down this week, and a week's gone by and neither fight's been announced. So this week, you'd think that both this and their other pay-per-view offering they've got should hopefully be signed on. But I think the criticism for Hearn, and he's not guilt-free, is that he has a habit of saying things are done, or making out like things are much further along than they are. And it's quite clear from that Kell Brook hasn't signed anything at all. It seems like he's just getting to the point where he's looking at signing for that fight. But the way it was talked about weeks ago was as though it was done. But you never know. It could all just be public posturing just to try and build interest in the fight. I think you could look at it in a cynical way and say, because it's a very good fight, but it's not a big fight, the show needs all the promotion it can get. And if it means that these two sort of hate each other or they build up a rivalry, then I suppose that's only going to help the show sell.
Yeah, Andy, we all know that Eddie likes a bit of beef. Maybe, as Paul says, he is trying to stall or whatever. Vargas maybe will be looking at his options in the meantime. Maybe a rematch with Tim Bradley or something like that. But if this fight doesn't happen, I've been critical of Kell Brook in the past. No agenda. I want to see him fight the best fighters. I just want to see him active against decent guys. We're looking at him fighting your Dans, your Gavins, your who's the other guy, Biziers, and these type of guys. He needs a fight like Jesse Vargas at the very least. And they're talking about Lamont Peterson as well. His name being thrown into the ring. We really need to see better from Brook. And if he's stalling over money, is this a pattern that we noticed with Brook, Andy, throughout his career? Is he a problem? Is he a problem to deal with for whoever's promoting him?
Yep, I would say so, mate. I'll get to that in a minute. But just a comment about Eddie Hearn likes a bit of beef. I'm not too sure about that, but it's rumoured that Kell Brook likes a bit of beef. But just your last comment there, are we seeing a trait? Of course we are. I mean, how often? That's 4 fights, I think, now. Maybe even 5. That he's actually, for one reason or another, the fights are not getting signed. I mean, they mentioned Vargas, obviously. Devin Alexander, that fight was signed about 2-3 times, I think. Rios was mentioned. Bradley's been mentioned. Chavez, Diego Chavez, I should say. None of the fights have materialised for one reason or another. And as you say, he ended up fighting Trash, Dan. On the last 3 fights, I think he's fought. He's chased the can fight for so long, it's passed him by, and it's not going to happen for him now. I really think Kell Brook is looking for the biggest money fight possible. As I say, the can fight's not there, so if he's going to try and get maybe 2-3 fights, big money, and probably retire, I really don't think his heart's in it. I really don't think his heart's in boxing just now. I just think it's more about the money for him, and it's not about the legacy. And he's not really going about it to say he's going to stamp his mark on his legacy and stuff. I really don't think so. Vargas, he's been making comments and stuff. Obviously, I don't think he's going to get the same amount of money for fighting Bradley a second time. But at the same time, it's a better, it's still a top 10 opponent that Vargas is going to fight. As Paul mentioned, to get him over here, you've got to pay him, good money. He has got the deck stacked against him, so to speak. So, no, I think, as you say, Steve, as well, Brook is probably the problem here. He's wanting too much money. He's had to make concessions. He's not willing to make any more, probably. But at the end of the day, if it's about your legacy, it's about getting another world. Just think about it. If you pick up another world title, your bargaining position's actually increased. But nah, he's wanting paid now, and that's it.
Do you know the problem that he's got? The problem he's got is Matchroom have a habit of, or Eddie has a habit of overinflating his own fighters' egos. He tells them they're the best thing in the world, and then when it comes to negotiating and fighting money, he actually has to rein them in and go, actually, no, you aren't that big. So it happened with Quigg, with the Frampton situation, when Frampton was the far bigger name, the far bigger sell, but it got difficult because Quigg and his lawyer expected a bigger percentage than what they were probably entitled to. And I think it's the same situation with Brook. He's told Brook he's a superstar, even though Brook's never sold out an arena. And, you know, he's been fighting Jojo Dans of this world.
That's an excellent point, actually, Paul. I suppose if you keep telling someone they're a superstar, and when it comes to the monetary situation, oh, sorry, you're not as big a superstar as we were telling you. You know, it is, it is a good point, actually. Dave, one of the issues has been over the venue. We heard it was going to be at Bramall Lane, which is Sheffield United's ground. I was actually at Bramall Lane myself. Now that I think about it, I think it was about 96, 97. There was no fighting going on, but it was Wolves against Sheffield United, and we lost 1-0. I think it was big Marcelo, Brazilian, got the winner that day. But that's beside the point anyway. They're talking about Bramall Lane, and the initial problem was that they wanted to wait till the fixture list came out to see whenever Sheffield United were playing at home, etc. Now they're talking about this Sheffield Arena, which would probably seem more feasible, given is Brook really the ticket seller that we're expecting him to be. Just, Dave, do you think that regarding Brook's career and what I was saying to Andy there, he went over to America to fight Sean Porter, right, and he beat him, but there's a lot of credit in the bank for that. But do you think the credit from that Porter win is starting to run out now? Because it was a long time ago, really, in boxing terms now.
Not just starting to. I think it's run out because he already had some to take some doing to get back in our good books before the Porter fight, because of how many he'd avoided. Well, you can argue whether it was a duck or not. He'd somehow avoided to fight any top names, and despite having fights scheduled with Bradley and Alexander before that. So that never happened. But then the Porter fight, yeah, he got some credit. I mean, it was a bit of a gut check. He stood in there. I think he should have lost some points for his holding, or at least been forced to stop doing it because it was hideous and it reminded me of Vlad. But I'd like to see a rematch of that fight, honestly, because it was very close and it was ugly, due to both guys' fault. Because we've seen that Porter can be in a good fight if you give him a good opponent like Keith Thurman. That's how you beat Sean Porter like a man. So then Kell Brook immediately goes off, gets himself stabbed, probably in more ways than one, in Tenerife. That just puts him on the shelf for about a year, right? Then he comes back against a bum, another bum, fails to get the fight with Chavez. I think that he pulled out because he found out he wasn't going to be on pay-per-view that time. Then fights another bum. So it's time. You either do something. It's past time. You either continue to be a world level fighter and fight guys who are at your level, or you just fade into obscurity. I think he should just move up to 154 because I think he's tight at the weight, and there's some names there that he could actually gain some respect against. I don't think he cares about respect though, so I don't really particularly care about Brook. I would love him to lose and then just retire.
Okay, fair enough, Dave. Loving to lose and then retire. Paul, we've had a few Twitter questions come in over the course of the weekend, a few about Brook and Vargas. So I'm going to throw them in now so we don't end up in a point of repetition, really. I'm going to ask you this question from Mick Doonan, which I thought was quite a good one. If Khan fought all of Kell Brook's opponents, would he still have his O? And would Kell still have his O if he had fought all of Amir's?
I think, would Amir Khan have beaten Matthew Hatton? Would he have beaten Senchenko? Would he have beaten Donut Dan, Bizier? Yeah, Gavin. I think he'd have beaten all of those guys. Would he have beaten Sean Porter? I think so, maybe. I mean, Porter's a big puncher, or has been shown to be a big puncher, but I think Khan possibly could have outboxed him, but Khan's very difficult to predict. Could Kell Brook have beaten all of Khan's guys? Now, that's a much better question, because would Kell Brook have beaten Madonna at that stage? I mean, it's difficult with the weight disparity, but in terms of names, Madonna, Judah, most of Khan's best performances have been at a weight that Kell Brook's never fought at. So I think you'd probably say, would Kell Brook have beaten Canelo? Not for me. So yeah, that's a difficult one. I think it's because as much as we think of them both as being welterweights, the majority of Amir Khan's success.
Yeah, we had another question, Andy, off Kevin Watson, who actually said, "What the fuck has happened to Kell Brook?" So I think that's what we're trying to discuss at the moment, Kevin. We're trying to get to the bottom of what is going on with Brook. So no pun
Got to
intended
get
there.
something this week, surely, to Christ. I mean, Eddie Hearn's got to come out and say something within the next couple of days, surely.
What do you think he's going to come out and say? I mean, how's this going to end? I do agree with Paul. You know what? I would love to say that I think the fight's going to happen, but with Brook, as Dave has laid out all of these different things about the Chavez and Alexander, there's a real good chance that this fight isn't going to happen, you know.
It is. I mean, as I say, well, when you first asked me, actually, if you look at his track record, you know, he's had at least 4 or 5 fights sort of fell by the wayside. I just don't think he can be trusted. You know, I remember the Alexander fight. I think it was an ankle injury or something like that. I'd actually heard that he had been eating something like chocolate or something like that, and then he got all guilty about it, so he decided to go for a run to try and burn it off and went over on his ankle. I've also heard that he's been forced to stay at Dominic Ingles' house because he just cannot be trusted to kind of make the weight properly. So they're actually on his arse at all times, fucking locked him probably in the back bedroom so he can't like climb out the window and go and suck dick or buy chocolate or whatever, you know. So
chocolate brownies.
Well, the problem that Brook's got is the only time Brook was ever in any kind of run of fitness and form was when he was never out the gym. So when he'd fought Donut Dan and then he was in straight in with Frankie Gavin, wasn't he? Because he never left the gym, so he never got a chance to sort of be out of shape. I think it's difficult. I've said before with 147 pounds is you need to be in America, and I've never really liked that adage because I think that America is flat for a lot of reasons. I mean, Dave's story of let's bring everyone down to the front 10 rows. Could you imagine that in a UK show? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it just wouldn't happen. Well, maybe at a Warren show, but not a big show. So I just think that you look at Brook's track record, you go back as far as Alexander, but like he was fighting Brandon Rios all of last year, you know, and everyone sort of forgets that, you know, that fight just sort of disappeared, and he is injury prone, and he looks. I mean, some of the recent pictures of him, he does look huge. I've only fought Gavin. I know Gavin's a small welterweight or a light welterweight, as most people see it, but the size disparity was massive. And for me, Kell Brook is 154 pounder. All they've done is they've hung around for an Amir Khan fight that's not going to happen. So now they're like, right, well, there's nothing much we want at 154, so let's deliver a massive fight at 147. If they had any brains, they'd have sent him to America. But because Hearn's determined that Brook is a big fighter and he's a big name, and he's not top 5 biggest names in Britain for me. He's determined to push him and bring him Vargas over. The problem is Vargas to a lot of British fans is an unknown, so I'd wonder how well it would sell anyway. Forget the pay-per-view, just tickets. I look at the clamour for Eubank Triple G. Everyone's talking about that fight, even though it's pretty much a complete mismatch. Brook Vargas is potentially a really good 50-50, but there's just very little anticipation for it, and I think that Hearn's gauging that before he pulls the trigger on it. But I think ultimately it will happen. I think we will see that fight signed, and it will happen in October.
And then
What
after
the question,
that
by the
fight,
way, was it no Brook? Sorry, Steve. Was it no Brook that was actually saying or pushing it back until October? I mean, that's clear signs either A, he's struggling with the weight, he needs more time, or B, it's definitely the money.
Well, look how he looked at the card. Was it last week? He looked like about a middleweight or more than that, wasn't he? He was totally out of shape.
He was doing commentary. What fight was it? It was on Sky.
The
was it Joshua, wasn't it? Yeah.
Does Sky not have a show for America they showed recently? No, was he not on that one?
Thurman and Porter, was he doing the analysis for that?
Was that on Sky?
I don't know. I didn't see the Sky. It was on Sky though.
Yeah,
Right,
it was on. He was on Sky.
Must have been that one then. I think he was at that one.
But how close are we to having that Golovkin versus Eubank Jr. fight like nailed down? Because I mean, if Canelo's going to be a little shithouse and not fight Golovkin, I am actually quite interested in the Eubank versus Golovkin fight. I like the daring to be great, and at least it's a middleweight versus a middleweight.
I think that fight's very close. I think it's the date that's been going around. It's been quite widely known. Obviously, it seems that Gennadi's well up for it. Tom Loeffler's up for it. Matchroom won it. Eubank Jr. has been saying all the right things. It's just a case, I think, of them announcing it. But it's just down to, obviously, Senior had that dispute with Sky Box Office. but there's no reason why. September the 3rd at the O2 Arena seems to be almost an assumed thing, and now I've booked my hotel for it. I booked my hotel for a fight that's not even signed yet. That's how much I'm assuming it will happen.
I hope it gets delayed.
So I hope it does.
I hope it
And
gets
by a
delayed.
week, it's all right, mate. Don't worry that the Viking Hotel in Stratford will be waiting for me, regardless of the date.
Oh dear, you should not give the name out there, mate, because I'll be phoning it up right now.
Mate, it's the worst hotel in the world. I invite people to come and try and find me and not lose all your belongings on the way.
Viking Hotel.
£58 for a hotel and breakfast in London on a Saturday night. I'm expecting something amazing.
So they're going to be bringing GGG over to London.
Yeah, why
Looking that way.
not? It's a pay-per-view fight. It's a sellout arena, 20,000 people.
That's cool.
And Eubanks, apparently his quote's meant to be £3 million. And I think Billy Joe, what was he offered for that fight again? 2.5, 2.2 or something? No, I see him fighting Lemieux, but he's wanting $2 million for it or something. Is he fucking serious?
It was a career high payday either way, and he should have taken it.
Well, he wants $4 million for Triple G, is what he said. $4 million, and then he wants, the quote was $2 million to fight on the Canelo undercard, even though it looks like that Canelo card is heading to regular HBO and not HBO pay-per-view. So the idea that they'd have $2 million spare, let alone paying Lemieux. I mean, Billy Joe's mad. He should dive all over that card if the Lemieux fight's offered to him. But he'll price himself out. I don't get him. He'd rather be trying to fight Max Bursak.
Paul, just on the subject of Billy Joe, actually, Sam Clark was asking, who do you think will lose their world title first, Billy Joe, AJ, or Kell Brook?
I suppose the most likely would be Kell Brook, presuming the Vargas fight comes off. Joshua's not going to be fighting until December. Billy Joe might not be fighting anyone for the foreseeable at the moment, and then if he does, I don't imagine it will be a particularly difficult opponent. So yeah, I'd probably say Brook most likely. I think that depends how a lot of people see the Brook Vargas fight. I think Brook should beat him, he really should, but I think there'll be a lot of people picking Vargas.
I think Brook beats Vargas easy enough, but I think he's still at risk because Spence is coming up as his mandatory, and who knows how long he can continue to make that weight. I think he might just drop the belt.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Dave actually, he probably will just float on up to 154 rather than hang around waiting for the likes of Spence, which is a shame because you've got your Spences, you've got your Thurmans. I mean, who knows what's going on with Garcia? Looks like he's going to be fighting Andre Berto next. So the logical move, I always thought Dave would actually sign with Heyman. I'm surprised he hasn't. But then again, I thought he was going to move up to 154. I'm surprised he hasn't. His whole career seems to be a big bout of inertia.
Well, he should have signed with Heyman to get those fights made, but I think he's content to... are we still live?
Yep.
Okay. I think he's content to take the easy fights for the unnecessarily big paydays. Heyman would eventually match him tough. Hearn, he has more control over Hearn. He's got more leverage over Hearn. Heyman would not give him such leverage.
Just moving back onto Eubank Golovkin, actually, I was having to think about this during the week, and I think, first of all, I want to give Eubank credit, actually, which I don't usually do. I think if the fight doesn't happen, I'm blaming Senior, because I'm not a Senior fan. I think he will be the stumbling block. He'll either ego, he'll decide all of a sudden that his son's overmatched or whatever. I think he will be the stumbling block. If the fight happens, it will be in spite of him rather than because of him. But I give Junior a lot of credit for taking this fight, but I think it's a clever tactic on Junior's behalf, because similar to the way whenever Khan went over to fight Canelo, Junior puts himself in a sort of no-lose situation where he makes such a big step up in class from Tom Duran at British level and all these other guys at title level, Chudinov really, it probably his best win, or whoever his best win was, all the way up to Golovkin, and he can't really come out of anything but with credit from this fight, really, because even if he gets banged out after 4 or 5 rounds, they'll say, well, he stepped up and fought the man, well, nobody else wanted to do this, and then he can go back down and fight all your other guys with his credit still intact. Whereas if he worked his way up and fought, say, Saunders in a rematch, maybe Lemieux, maybe Danny Jacobs, and got beat by one of them. Now, he could beat all three. He could lose to one, two, or three of the other, but at least he doesn't have to go through all those guys and potentially get beaten to fight Golovkin. It actually is quite a clever move on his behalf. It reminds me a little bit of back whenever I lived in Wolverhampton, I used to know a guy called Mick, and what Mick used to do, every time we used to go out drinking, he used to go straight to the bar. He used to buy up about 8 or 9 aftershocks. I don't even know if you can get aftershocks anywhere. Maybe I'm dating myself now. And he used to knock them in one after another, bang, 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 bang. And after about 15 minutes, he was completely blottoed. He was just staggering around, had to go home. He made himself sick. He was drinking all these shots, blah, blah, blah. And when we worked out after a while, the reason why Mick was doing this was because he couldn't handle his beer. And if he stood and drank with everybody else and had about 2 or 3 pints, he'd still be bladdered. But to save the shame, he went straight to the bar, drank all these shots, and at the end of the night, everyone says, well, flip me, no wonder he was bladdered. Look what he drank. So Chris Eubank Jr. is doing a similar type of thing here by going straight to the bar, buying all the aftershocks, and then whenever he's bladdered, they can say, well, you know,
he gave it a go.
Speaking of guys named Mick, one of our listeners, Mick Doonan, says even Junior wishes that Senior isn't his dad.
It's an the dynamic there is the fact that Junior needed Senior to get him a contract, get him signed, get him on TV, but now Junior's done it based on his own ability. He doesn't. His last name now could be Jones, for all I care about, because he's not a I don't think a world class middleweight, but he's a very exciting middleweight. He's never in boring fights, and I sort of agree when I say that, you know, there's no loss if he goes against Golovkin. Certainly, if he went in and fought Danny Jacobs and lost, he's got nowhere to go, really. He's either then lost to Billy Joe and Danny Jacobs. If he loses to Golovkin, there are still fights there. But if Golovkin embarrasses him and spanks him around the ring, then it will be bad, because I compare everything with Golovkin's performances to Martin Murray, and Martin took a shellacking for 11 rounds, but he did stand up to him. And I think there are fighters who have gone multiple rounds with him. I mean, Lemieux managed to go 7 somehow. So I think if Eubank gets walked over in 2 rounds, I think that doesn't do him much favours for his career. However, what it will give him is an insanely big payday, which is all that these fighters care about anyway. And obviously it will mean the risk reward is, if he does pull off the impossible and does manage to beat him, then he becomes a huge boxing star. And it's just, his dad is just a nightmare. He's a nightmare at press conferences. He's a nightmare in the corner. He's a nightmare when they're talking about like as if he's trying to like dictate to Sky like how the box office percentage will be split. And it's as if like Sky and Barney Francis is going to go, yeah, all right, Chris, yep, I agree. Yeah, have whatever you want. You know, you know what? In a way, as mad as he is, and as I said, I can't stand the guy. Everything he did with the Blackwell situation was deplorable. Trying to take credit for that, but he's got his son in a position where he's 1 fight away from a huge fight on box office, considering that his best win is Shudinov, and he got beaten by Billy Joe, a fight which will just be brushed under the never happened. And it's so weird, like it's almost as if Sky never mentioned it. They're trying to like pretend it never happened because it wouldn't go with their narrative of how good Eubank really is when he got beaten by Billy Joe, in my opinion, by a few rounds. It was close at the end, but for 6 rounds he froze and did nothing.
It's funny you should say that, actually, Paul, because there has been a sort of, not a whitewashing of history, that's a way too strong a way to put it, but I've heard it on quite a few different discussion points and podcasts and tweets and stuff. A lot of people now do sort of go with that angle and say, well, if he'd have started a bit quicker against Billy Joe Saunders, sure he'd have won that, as if it's now a given.
I didn't think he really showed anything against Saunders except good athleticism. His boxing was shit. And it still is. Like against Tom Duran, I thought he looked uncertain. Like he was desperately trying to look like a slickster, but kept missing and kept getting caught by shots that he thought he could slip. So he ultimately just out-athleticized the guy.
I've just got visions of him throwing one of them stupid lead looping hooks or uppercuts and Golovkin just punching him straight to the stomach and dropping him. You know, I mean, I don't know how we had this discussion I think before where I said the problem that I have with Golovkin-Eubank fight is normally, even if a fight's a mismatch, there's generally one thing that you think the one guy does better than the other or has that the other one doesn't. There's not a single thing that Eubank Jr. does better than Golovkin for me. People will talk about saying he has fast hands. Billy Joe Saunders has got faster hands than Golovkin, but I don't think Eubank does, and I think he telegraphs his punches. And when his inability to move backwards while keeping his hands up, I mean, he could get absolutely blitzed. You know, people will be interested in the fight because it's Golovkin coming over. I'd probably go and pay to watch Golovkin fight anyone if it meant he was coming over to the UK. But there's a danger this is a massively uncompetitive fight.
See, the other thing is you just don't know how each are going to approach this fight. I mean, I really thought Golovkin was going to come out and smash Lemieux to pieces because I didn't rate Lemieux that highly. I was surprised he came out and just boxed off a jab using that amateur pedigree, which, by the way, a guy with 300 fights as an amateur, just taking away what he's done as a pro, you know, he's well schooled, well rounded, Golovkin. I think Eubank Jr.'s had something like, is it 25 amateur fights or something? I mean, he's fought absolutely nobody coming up in pro ranks. I think the best opponent he faced, I think, before Billy Joe was probably Bradley Price. You know, Bradley's usually good for taking people, you know, the distance and stuff. But you know, as you said, Paul Saunders, I think for the first 6-7 rounds, he was lost. He was throwing amateur shots, lead uppercuts. He still does it. He did it against Duran last week. He's just aching to get countered. But I just don't know how Junior's going to approach this fight. I mean, is he going to go balls to the wall and just go for it and just like unload a ton of punches? I mean, the one thing people will say about Golovkin is, you know, can he fight off the back foot? All he's really got to do is just kind of, you know, as he steps back, put the jab in your face and just throw a right hand into the centre mass. But at the same time, you just don't know, you know, what Eubank is going to do. Is he going to box? I really don't know. His jab's not the greatest. I did say that last week. When he does elect to use it, it's okay, but it's no Golovkin type jab. You know, his power's overrated. And he just looks to try and outpunch you. You know, and just on the hope and basis that he's going to try and take you out. I mean, Tudorov, tough as fuck. Nick Blackwell, tough as fuck. Right? Those kids would just refuse to yield. What the fuck's Golovkin going to do? He's not going to yield. He took the best punches off Curtis Stevens. Many people say that he got caught off quite a few left hooks and hurt a couple of times in that fight, which I don't actually see. But there's nothing. I just don't see how Eubank is in any way competitive in this fight. All he can do is use his athletic ability and move. Just throw these awkward punches from weird angles, just step out of distance stuff and just do something like that. But he's not going to basically stand in a firefight with Golovkin. No chance. If he does, he's going to get folded early. And I was thinking about it the other day there. Is Senior going to kind of look at this fight as him against Nigel Benn type situation? I says, no, it can't be, because Benn was nowhere near a greater boxer as what Golovkin is. So the situations aren't kind of like the same. You know, at the same time, you know, when Ben fought Senior, it was more classed as a domestic fight and a fourth-tier world title. We're talking about the best middleweight in the world just now. And you could still say that Eubank Jr. is still a prospect. It could end very, very badly.
Yeah, Andy, who's going to work out the strategy and all that as well? Because obviously we know that the corner's not the most stable area either, and what goes on behind the scenes. Eubank's obviously the main man, so we to assume Senior's going to be running the corner. He's going to be coming up with the strategy. He's going to be doing everything before. Ronnie Davis is basically the sort of glorified pads guy at the moment. I mean, there's no, you know, who's going to be working things out of how to beat this monster?
I hope so. I want Eubank Senior in the corner just to see how his emotions evolve as the fight goes on. It would just be for my own amusement. I hope it's totally uncompetitive.
Well, you got to want Senior in the corner to see him. Well, you got to have him there. I mean, after what he said to Conor Benn last week and stuff, you know, Chris should be in the corner. I think his dad should be there to pick him up off the canvas, take him to the corner, put some water on his head and stuff, wake him up. I see they've got this other guy in the gym just now doing pad work and the body work with him and stuff. I don't know who that is. It's just a mess really in the Eubank. Well, I'm not going to say it's a mess in the Eubank camp because that's obviously not true because they've obviously got this far. But you look at Eubank and you say to yourself, right, okay, he's got athletic ability. Can someone take that up just now? Something just happened. 2 seconds, guys.
He's got athletic ability.
He's got athletic ability. He's got 2 legs. 2 arms. In terms of his corner work, the problem is Eubank doesn't listen. He's one of, it's quite funny. He sits in the corner enjoying the rounds, and he gets instructions and does not pay attention. There's been fighters before that have looked like they're listening but not, and you can tell they're not always paying attention to every word. But he just doesn't seem to pay attention to Ronnie Davis. He disrespects Ronnie Davis. There's a football match going on right now, which I think is probably about the equivalent of what Golovkin versus Eubank will be, if anyone watching the France game. And it's just, he needs to, I remember when he brought Adam Booth on board, and I thought that's a really good idea, a smart guy who knows the sport, knows his boxing, and that all ended very quickly. You know, it's almost as if Booth went in and went, no, I'm not having that, working in that kind of environment. But it'll be all Ronnie Davis, but Eubank will be to putting the master plan behind it all, and then Ronnie Davis will be in the towel carrier.
So Paul Edwards asked us earlier, shall he book his hotel and flights or whatever? I mean, would you advise first of all him to do that?
As long as you can cancel it all. One thing that I quite proudly sit with my David Hay versus Tyson Fury ticket, and my David Hay versus, who was the fat guy who was meant to fight before that in June? Anyway, I've all been there with fights that have been cancelled, fights that have been delayed. The biggest fight in history, Rumble in the Jungle, obviously got delayed and pushed back, so it can happen. I've booked a hotel on free cancellation, mainly because anytime you just see it, you know, anytime it gets an inkling of what's about to be announced, the prices just go up massively. So in terms of, I'd say definitely book a hotel. I wouldn't necessarily book flights or travel that you can't get refunded, but there's no harm in going on booking.com or whatever and getting a refundable hotel specifically for that date. Like I said, I'm saying December the 3rd because that seems to be the consensus date that a lot of people are saying, but it might be the 10th, it might be something else, I don't know. I had a look at the O2 schedule. December the 3rd is vacant on that Saturday, but there isn't a huge amount of shows on, so we'll see. But I think you're fairly safe to do something, but don't spend money that you won't be able to get back, which is a mistake a lot of people make. They'll book a hotel because it's £9 cheaper, and then the fight gets cancelled, and then you're stuck paying out for a room you don't really need. Was
it Manuel Char, the fight you were trying to think of?
That's the one. I shouldn't. Maybe saying the fat one was a bit unfair. Manuel Char. Yeah, I had a ticket. I had a ticket for Manuel Char, and then for Hey Fury. I've still got that ticket because Eventim never wanted them back. So cancellations do happen, and we are dealing with, you know, a big ego in Eubank Jr. Nothing would surprise me if they felt the man wasn't quite ready and they delayed the fight or tried to delay it. The thing is, because of Sky's schedule with these potential back-to-back pay-per-views, they can't afford to have this fight pushed back. And that's why I think it will definitely be September, because the Brook fight will have to be in October. There needs to be more than a month from what Hearn said they want to do. I mean, this is assuming that, you know, they've got common sense and they don't put on 40 quid's worth of pay-per-views in 1 month. That they are going to have to spread them one to the other. And there's no way that Brook will be ready for September, because he's a fat mess. So it makes total sense it's September, and I think it will be early September looking at the O2 schedule.
Andy, staying on the same subject, I'm going to more or less integrate most of our Twitter questions in for the remainder of the discussion. Matt, our boxing addict, threw one in which is relevant to what we're discussing. In the light of Eddie Hearn claiming that Brook versus Vargas and Triple G versus Eubank Jr. are both super fights, how do the panel define a super fight? Because if you're talking super fights, really, I mean, when I think of super fights,
Names.
I think of your De La Hoya Hopkinses, your Trinidads, your Tyson Holyfields. That seems like a super fight to me, and it seems a bit disingenuous to sort of level that against a Brook Vargas. But in the current climate and the way they're going to be trying to sell it and stuff, they're going to be leveling these as super fights.
Yeah, I mean, the way Hearn speaks, you know, Brook's the best welterweight in the world just now, but, you know, he's not proved it. That's a simple fact. Nobody knows who Kell Brook is, so how the hell is he fighting Sheffield? I mean, does he sell out arenas in Sheffield? Maybe the Matthew Hatton fight, I'm not entirely sure if he does, if he's a great ticket seller, but, you know, super fights are like people like Leonard Duran Tyson against Holyfield, Bo against Holyfield, that type of thing. Guys, like legit world champions or unified or undisputed champions, guys who maybe transcend the titles, guys like Ali, fighting Joe Frazier for the third time. I didn't really need a world title on the line, so to speak. So that's what I class as a super fight. Leonard against Hearns and stuff.
Are we really talking about Jesse Vargas versus Cal Brook being labeled the super fight?
That's what Eddie Hearns is.
Oh God, no. Okay. If the only potential super fight, well, we have two: Kovalev Ward, which should be a super fight. Although I don't think it will be promoted as well or with as much money and get as much attention as it deserves, or Canelo versus Golovkin, and that's less due to the talent involved and more due to the big names. But Vargas versus Brook, hell no.
What was the other one? Super fight?
Well, he said about Vargas Brook and Triple G Eubank Jr. It was because they're the two fights, the main fights that have been mentioned at the moment.
Well, see, Boris, see if you really put a gun to my head. If you gave me a list of names, a list of fights that I had to pay to watch. It was, so say Eubank, Golovkin, what else you got? Brook Vargas. What else we got coming up? It could potentially be pay-per-view.
Well, whoever Joshua's fighting next will be pay-per-view.
Right. If I really had to, I would probably buy Golovkin Eubank. Just simple fact is because it's Golovkin. Okay, so
yeah,
and there's a chance that fight could potentially be pretty decent, considering if Eubank's going to try and have a go at it, so to speak. But it's still not a super fight. Golovkin, Eubank. It's not a super fight. I mean, the only way, I suppose, we're all saying he's sitting here, he's going to get wasted and stuff like that. See if he turns this around and does the business. I mean, fuck's sake. How wrong are we all? We're just going to get fucking trolled.
It's like Bellew and Makabu, except...
that'll be a lot worse. But this will be a lot worse.
Yeah, Golovkin is far, far more proven than Makabu was.
That dog shagging your leg, Dave.
No, he's mad that the other dog's trying to get on the couch. He's... Stop! Hey! Okay.
Okay, so I've got my dog falling out of bed and fucking Dave's fighting his dogs.
Paul, Facebook question from Michael Reedy. Question for tonight. If you could do a Ryder Cup style boxing tournament, picking 5 boxers from each, who wins? Now, I'm completely golf illiterate. I'm assuming this Ryder Cup is 5 Americans and 5, isn't it, Europeans?
5 Europeans, yeah. Right,
so Joshua Wilder for a start would be one, or Fury Wilder even, maybe?
Well, if you're picking matchups rather than just the top 5 from each, I suppose, because Ryder Cup would just be you putting in your best guys regardless of weights. If you're picking out the top 5 Brits versus the top 5 Americans, but yeah, I suppose Wilder versus Fury would be a big option at heavyweight. I'm trying to think of actually European fighters that aren't English or Irish that are very good. It's not the biggest list, is it?
No.
Irish fighters?
No. I think outside of Great Britain and Ireland, continental Europe, France, Germany, Italy, Spain.
Oh, you got Golovkin.
Kazakhstan's not in Europe.
The fucking I do. Kazakhstan plays in European leagues, do they not?
Isn't it in Asia? But they play in European championships. Isn't there something about that?
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
I thought Kazakhstan's in Asia.
Aye, well, geographically, I suppose, but I'm pretty.
I suppose we'll try and claim Golovkin. We'll claim Golovkin. Golovkin versus
Kovalev.
Kovalev, Russian.
Yank now. He's got a Yank trainer and he lives here. He's ours.
But no, I was just thinking. It used to be that Germany used to have so many good names, and obviously like Italy, Spain, and that have never had much. But France has had 1 or 2 good fighters over the years. And it's just. I think continental Europe as a whole is really lacking. I think the demise of the German TV market for boxing, which seemed to happen so suddenly, I think it's had a real knock-on effect on their fighters. And they always used to import fighters anyway from Armenia and Azerbaijan and claim them as Germans. What else? Well, there's loads. Obviously,
Dam.
Yeah, exactly. And Dam from France, but he's not even really French. And he'll be at the Olympics. He won't be representing France at the Olympics, will he?
Cameroon. It was Cameroon, I think.
Yeah, he'll be there for Cameroon. So,
say Crawford.
Gale,
Say the Americans put Crawford up then, for example, Paul. I mean, who could we get to fight him?
Ricky
we've got
Burns.
Ricky Burns is all we've got, haven't we? I think
Ricky Burns is going to do the business rematch. So
Troyanovsky.
wants to see Eddie. Come on now, pay-per-view, baby.
Postol, even, where's he? He's
Ukraine.
Is he Ukrainian?
Yep.
There you are then.
That's Europe. We'll have him. Yeah, we'll have
Yeah.
We'll stick Postel over Burns.
To get the rankings, you'll have a good fucking stab at this. European. Bundu.
Lomachenko, can he go for Europe?
Bundu.
I tell you what, really, when you think about it, when you throw in Lomachenko, Kovalev, maybe Golovkin, etc., the European side have got a real strong lineup.
Yeah, but fucking really kick ass here, like. Petr Petrov. Yeah, he's Latikanen.
Where's he from?
He's Montenegro.
Right.
Right, to answer the Kazakhstan question, thanks to Google, 10% of Kazakhstan is in Europe, 90% of Kazakhstan is in Asia. I don't know where Golovkin was born, but I might have to check that, but I'm sure we can try.
Karaganda.
Okay.
On the Kyrgyzstan border.
Okay, Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, like
Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan and Afghanistan. Oh, Jesus Christ. London stan.
Lots of stands. He's Pakistan. He's Ghanistan. It's a good Lee Evans joke, that one was. But no, I think it'd be
Paul?
Yeah, I think it'd be fairly even. I think that historically the Americans have dominated the pound for pound rankings. Even if they're not the biggest names, they've always had guys dominating that. But now I think that certainly Britain, because of the amount of champions they've got, and there are the odd elite fighter from Eastern Europe. It does make me wonder whether there are more fighters from Eastern Europe that aren't quite getting through. I think Top Rank got burned a little bit with Korobov. I think they thought that Korobov was going to be another big killer, and he ended up not being so. So maybe they've all been. Yeah, exactly. So there was nothing about Korobov that I think that made you think that he wouldn't go on to be a world champion and a big name, and it just for whatever reason didn't quite work out. And I think sometimes when you've got guys that have fought so many amateur fights, we've seen it seeing how motivated they are as a pro. It's when you're turning over at potentially 31, 32 years old or older, and you're so used to fighting a certain style. It suits some, but I think there are been a few cases where the Zeus Shimmings of this world where it just hasn't suited all.
Right, Dave, we're going to move on. This is a question from Tony Nelson, FTC, on Twitter for you. Now, bear with me here. You might need to get a pen and paper. Whose O will be the first to go? Thurman, AJ, Wilder, Brook, Spence, or Ward? Dave.
He's shagging the dog, mate.
Is he off interfering with the dog?
I think he is. Might be a finger in the dog. He's on twice here. I'll take it on, mate. Well, obviously, there he is. Dave, you hear that question, mate?
No, I got kicked off. I'm not sure what happened there.
Well,
you take up that one, Andy, because I have another one for Dave, actually, that I can ask
right.
you.
Right. I'm going to plump for... Probably going to be my prediction for this one, actually. But as I say, I'm still on the fence with Kovalev Ward. So I don't really want to put that one in. So I would probably need to go with maybe Thurman, I think. I just think because maybe, how Porter managed to get him to the ropes and kind of tee off on him. Brook didn't allow that to happen to him, so obviously because he held him, but, I could just show that he was stronger. Maybe it's just because Thurman was tight at the weight, but it's probably a toss-up between Thurman and Ward out of that list just now, though. But I don't think we'll see Thurman again this year, the way he's actually going about his career just now. So probably Ward, but I think Thurman will be running about the mix here somewhere as well.
Yeah, I think if they all fought at the same sort of time schedule and at the same level of opposition, then it would be an easier question to answer. But it's quite difficult, like you say, Andy, because it could very easily be Ward, really, couldn't it? Yeah. The fact that he's fighting Kovalev, whereas Thurman might not even fight for another year. He could fight a body. AJ, I don't think he's going to be losing his O anytime soon because he's not going to be fighting anyone decent. It's a strategic sort of an answer you could give.
Yep, definitely. As I say, I don't think we'll see AJ in a live body until next year. I think they're talking about Wilder for next year, so just look like they're going to go for the Parker mandatory in October. So you'd imagine I can actually see him just like brute strength just going right through him on that one. But as you say, Steve, unless who's Garcia meant to be fighting shortly? I mean that fight against Berto. So he's not going to be fighting Thurman this year. I don't think he's not going to fight Berto and then fight Thurman back to back. It's not going to happen. No way, Garcia. Who's the fourth name?
Wilder and Brook, I think, were the other two.
Wilder and Brook. Well, Brook, as you know, mate, we just don't know what's happening with him. Wilder, I don't think we're going to see him get tested until he fights the likes of maybe AJ or Fury, and probably even Klitschko to that degree as well.
Well,
Dave, you back with us? Yeah.
We already have seen. I was just going to say we already have seen Wilder tested by some lower level guys. Unfortunately, even Eric Molina tested him.
This one was actually for Donny, but you're the designated voice of America on the pod, Dave. So we're going to ask you. You can be Donny's proxy. It was from Hattenbomb on Twitter. He says, question for Donny. As watching the PBC, thought to myself about the current state of US Olympians is dire, coupled with a poor showing in London 2012. Is there any hope for Rio 2014? I think he means Rio 2016 or in the future. So basically, is there any hope for American amateur boxing?
Well, yeah, no, yeah. Wait, now do I have to ramble for like 20 minutes? Okay. Actually,
the question
I was texting Donnie last night because he was texting me about the card. Now, according to him, there's a kid named Stevenson who's a favorite for gold. I don't know what weight he is.
Shakur Stevenson.
Stevenson, yeah.
Okay. And then there's a Latino kid at a lower weight who's also has some hope. I have not looked into it at all. I do have more hope, though, based on one factor. The amateur scoring is now changing, and the headgear is being removed. Now, in 2012, I think the Americans, who, particularly Errol Spence and Jojo Diaz, they had styles that were more geared towards the pros. Like, they were sitting on their shots more. They were going to the body. And hopefully this will be more of a factor now, because I think Errol Spence, absolutely, if they scored it like they scored the pros, Errol Spence would have moved on and gotten a medal. So yeah, I think that might be a bigger factor than actually new names we have coming up. I'm going to be watching it, at least. And Claressa Shields, my girl Claressa Shields, she's going to be back at the Rio Olympics. She should be favored for gold as well. Nobody could touch her in 2012. She was a beast, and she was only 17 then. She's been fighting as an amateur since then, whooping ass. So I pick her to get another gold medal.
It's a far cry, isn't it, with the American prospects really from the likes of even Ricardo Williams. I think he fought in '96, never made it as a pro as well as they thought he was going to be. I don't think Bajardo ever fought in the he wasn't an Olympic prospect, was he? Panchito Bajardo.
In the '90s, we had a bunch of guys like David Reed, like a bunch of guys who were amateur standouts, and they never panned out in the pros, because I think that was sort of the beginnings of that amateur scoring system, like blowing it for us, which I think that was put into place after the '88 Olympics, where Roy Jones was robbed, right?
There was a heavyweight a few years ago who was supposed to be quite decent. He did okay as an amateur, but he never made it as a pro. I remember him getting beaten up by Kevin Johnson. I think it was on ESPN. I'm thinking in my head Vargas, but that doesn't sound right. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
No, mate.
Call that guy.
Kevin Johnson, the great.
Yeah, Kevin Johnson beat him. I'll look it up on BoxRec anyway while I'm asking Paul this next question. It's not really important, to be honest with you, so listeners, don't be worrying about that too much. Paul, question from George Atwell on Twitter. Do you think Box Nation are on their way out from struggling to sell tickets? And do you think it's likely Smith and Flanagan will move over to boost their profile as fighters? Now, talking about moving over, actually, before you answer that, wasn't it someone has actually moved the other way, haven't they? Isn't it Lucian Reed was fed up with not getting opportunities with Matchroom, and he's actually gone over to Frank?
Yeah, he's gone over. I mean, a prospect like Lucian Reed should be fighting 7-8 times a year, and he wasn't. He was fighting 2 or 3, so he wants to go somewhere where he's going to get more fights. I think the problem is Matchroom have a lot of sort of southeast-based fighters, UK-based fighters, London, Kent, etc., and there aren't enough shows to put them on. And the problem is, if you're going to be on a Joshua show, to warrant your spot on that, you need to be able to sell an awful lot of tickets or have a famous last name. So how are Box Nation doing? Do you know what? From the resident Box Nation critic on here, I don't see how you can knock what Warren's doing with the Liam Smith situation. Do you know what? He's tried to get him a fight over here. It's not worked out. He put on that fight against Radosevich, and there was no one there. Like 1,000 people went. So why not send them over? I think for Smith and Flanagan, it makes total sense because, you put them on big international shows. And I've come to the point with Box Nation where I accept that for the most part, not entirely, for the most part, their domestic coverage at world level or just below will never be that good. Occasionally, they put on a really good show, or they put together, at least on paper, before pullouts and things ruin it for them, good shows. But if you're for Liam Smith and for Terry Flanagan, two guys who have relevant belts, whether you think that certainly one of them deserves to be classed as a world champion or not, they both have them. So why not send them over to America? We get the fight on the international feed, and those guys get big matches. It makes total sense.
A US Olympian update, by the way. I was quickly Googling that there. It was in 2009, Kevin Johnson beat Devin Vargas, who was 17-0 at the time, who was a decent American prospect at one point. And Vargas hasn't fought in 2 years, but he was last seen getting knocked out in 2014 by one Mr. Dominic Brazil, who was 10-0 at the time. So,
No.
if anybody remembers. Do you remember him, Dave?
No, I had never seen him.
There you are. Never mind Spencer Fearon. There's me bringing the irrelevant knowledge on the Boxing Asylum. Don't forget to subscribe for more nuggets.
Was saying though about the Smith versus Canelo fight. It's great. I think it's great for Smith and for Warren because they're going to make money. They're going to get exposure. I mean, over here nobody knows who Smith is, and that's why I think it's going to be a big test of Canelo's drawing power, given the fact that he's pretty blatantly avoiding the fight that he claimed he was going to make after his last fight. We'll see if the Mexicans stand by him. Are they going to pay for the pay-per-view? Are they going to show up in droves? I don't know. We're going to find out. I hope not.
I don't think they will. He's been getting some grief, hasn't he? I know Estrada was quite critical of him as well on social media.
Well,
you have to take my word from it. Yeah. Right. Andrew, you still with us?
Yes, just watching fucking France just pummeling the Nordic guys here 4-0. Fucking hell.
What's the score? I haven't got the
4-0 France. 4-0 after the first half.
Flip's sake. Right, let's give a console anybody with this question from Daryl Jelly. I think this might be the last question actually, so we'll be moving on to Bellews if anyone else hasn't got anything to talk about. Daryl Jelly, Andy's asking you, how many UK World Champions will there be by the end of 2016, and how many current champions will lose their belts?
Oh, I think we got this question before. Who we classing as world champions here? See, this is the thing.
Well, we've got De Gale, haven't we? We've got Crawler, say.
Fury.
We've got AJ, Brook, Fury.
How many is it in total? 13?
Yeah, I was going to say 12, but yeah, 13 could be. Frampton.
Yeah, Frampton's obviously lost it. Well, he gave his up, didn't he?
Paper.
Do you think he'll lose to Santa Cruz?
No, I think he'll beat Santa Cruz, mate. I've got money on that fight with Seb, if Frampton wins that fight. Right, well, obviously, Ricky Burns has got this fight coming up. It's a mandatory defence against some Belarusian guy. I'll need to try and look him out because never seen him before, but he seems to have a wee bit of power about him. But I would imagine Ricky would probably have enough to get past that. Fury could potentially lose his title, just through sheer inactivity. We're not counting Jimmy McDonald as a world champion, I don't think, because he's fighting for the real, or supposedly meant to be fighting, who's it? Rishi Warren for the super title.
Rishi Warren, yeah.
De Gale, Jack fight doesn't seem to be happening. I would probably class De Gale as a world champion, probably. Tony Bellew, vacant title, suppose, but Lebedev was clear number one, I suppose, in that one. So maybe Bellew as well, depends who he fights as well.
Just on the subject of Fury, actually, I don't know if anyone has any opinions on this. I heard someone talking the other day about the possible implications if Fury was found guilty of these drug violations, about Joshua holding the IBF belt. Personally, I can't see the IBF doing anything. There's going to be no recriminations because Fury's effectively nothing to do with him now. He's not their champion anymore. That won't have any wider effort situation, I wouldn't have thought.
No, I wouldn't think so, mate. What would be interesting, would be if Fury has been found guilty of anything, is if the decision will be overturned, because if you go back and look Felix Sturm against Sam Solomon, Mike Solomon's B sample came back clean, and the decision was never overturned. So you just wonder if the Germans maybe push for an overturning of the result, because the Klitschko's are tight with the BDB.
Yeah, I think if someone gets caught and they're directly holding the belt or whatever, then there could be some kind of something happening after that. But the fact that Charlie took the belt and Joshua knocked him out, it's gone by the wayside now. I can't see that having an effect. Paul, this was discussing on the pod recently, actually. Liam Boxing 23 has asked, how many world title shots would Jamie Moore have had if he was promoted by Eddie Hearn now? And I think that just shows the wider point that we've made on a few occasions. It's a shame that guys like Moore retired and can't call themselves world champions, no matter the fact that they had so many great fights, went to the well in any other era, particularly this one. They probably would have got a world title shot, probably would have won one. Whereas in the past, they can't call themselves world champions. It is a bit unfair on the likes of Moore, but I suppose that's just the way the sport's gone.
I'm not really sure on that, because I think that Jamie Moore was in some great wars and some good fights, but does he have a standout win above European level? Obviously, we all know about the Macklin fight, and later on in his career, he was starting to get matched with some difficult guys, and he was losing those fights. But I'm trying to think from back to his career. I've not got box record. Well done, Iceland. Go on, lads. What is Jamie Moore's best win above English or British level? If he does nowadays, you don't necessarily need to have a big win to get a world title. Paul Smith's proven that. So in this environment, he would have got a title shot off the Macklin win. But at the time, it wasn't quite exactly the same. Would he have been given multiple chances? I don't know, because you have to remember that the guys that get given multiple chances and lose them all, a la Martin Murray, get given those chances for a reason, because they know they're going to be durable and give it a go. They're not going to fall over in a round, but they're not likely to win. So that's why certain fighters get all these opportunities. Could Jamie Moore win a world title in the current environment? No, I don't think. I always thought he was a very good fighter, but when people talk about him being better than Harold Graham in terms of the best Brit not to win a world title, I think that's wrong, personally. I don't think that they were comparable, but like I said, Moore was just... I remember I caught the tail end of Moore's career. I never got to see him fight properly live. All I've seen is what I've seen on YouTube.
Yeah, I never saw him live, but I was well into the sport by the time he was fighting on Sky, and I think that's a fair assessment by you, actually. I remember his breakout win really was the Michael Jones fight. Jones was undefeated. He wasn't hyped up by Sky. They weren't really hyped up the way they are now, but Jones had been on Sky a couple of times and they fancied him. I think he was the British champion, and Moore beat him. And then they had another couple of fights, and I remember Moore losing to Ozzy Duran. I think he hurt his hip in about the third round all of a sudden, or he got hit on the pelvis or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he was always a very exciting fighter. And like you say, the Macklin fight was an absolutely brilliant war. Macklin fought the wrong tactical fight, but it was a superb win for Moore. But I think what I was saying to you was, did he not stop Michel Piccirillo at one point towards the end of his career? Now, I know Piccirillo was probably done by then, but that was probably one of his best wins. Piccirillo never competed really at world level as such, but he did sort of get there towards the end. I'm trying to think, who did Piccirillo fight? Was it Corey Spinks? We'll end up in a black hole here, aren't I? Can anybody remember? Does anybody even care?
Give me 2 seconds. Just got his record up there now, mate. He fought Lucas Kachelny for the European title. He fought Corey Spinks twice. Won the first fight for the vacant IBF title and then lost the rematch.
Was the first one in Italy, yeah?
Yeah, in fact the 2 fights were in Italy, mate.
Oh, didn't Piccirillo fight Ricardo Mayorga as well?
Now you're asking 2 seconds. He did fight that Alessandro Duran. He was kicking around a fair bit around about that time. He was a European champion a few times over Frankie Randell. He fought Mayorga as well. He fought him for a vacant WBC title in Chicago in 2005.
There you go then.
And he fought
That was
Vernon
a decent
Forrest.
win from all. Oh, did he fight Forrest as well?
Yep, that was for another world title shot. Got stopped in 11 rounds.
There we are then. So I think he would have had more opportunities maybe, and he might have picked up a shot, or at least maybe picked up a belt in this era. But like you say, Paul, it depends on the strength of the division as well. But yeah, Moore was a good fighter. I think we're all agreed on that. Right, anyway, enough of that. Dave Lowback, Dave Wilson is asking you another fantasy matchup. I'm not sure if this is a tongue-in-cheek one or not, but do your best. He says, who wins and how? Anthony Joshua versus the undefeated Riddick Bowe that went into the first Holyfield fight in 1992.
Anthony Joshua versus him?
Yeah.
Oh, Riddick Bowe, absolutely. I have to say that. I mean, we don't know how good Joshua is, but I certainly don't believe he's on that level. No way. Riddick Bowe, that was probably the best Bowe we ever saw as well. And he could fight outside and inside, had great speed, great power, great toughness, and a phenomenal gas tank for that fight. He didn't always have that, I guess, but that was a tremendous performance. And Bowe was really a tremendous fighter, ruined by his own desires to eat, and I guess he was probably a little brain damage too, but Bowe,
say what you like. Yeah, sorry, Dave. There's a little lag. Cut you off at the end there. Say what you like about Bowe. Really, he was an exciting fighter, and he was a bloody good fighter, wasn't he? I was watching his fight with Jesse Ferguson on YouTube the other day, and the way he got that jab and hooked off it, and that he was really quite an athletic dude, surprisingly enough, in his prime.
Yeah, and he was never even like ripped. He was in like good shape, but he was never ripped. He never cut up like Joshua, but he was just a physically tremendous specimen in terms of what he could do in there.
Paul, we've discussed this before on the pod, so this is quite an interesting question from George Reynolds. Do you think they're matching Joshua easily until McCracken is allowed to do the corner work after the Olympics?
No, because I think McCracken does all the important stuff. I mean, McCracken gets him in shape. McCracken's the voice of everything up till fight night. I think obviously once the Olympics is out of the way, it's a fair point that will we see Sims sort of get a step aside, or will it be a joint role? I'm not really sure how it will work, but we all know that Joshua, where he trains, we all know where he lives when he's training. It certainly isn't Sims's gym in Essex. So the problem for McCracken is McCracken gets well paid to do the Olympic role, and it's a steady job. You know, one thing about amateur boxing in the Olympics is generally the funding is pretty consistent. It'll be even better this year when we come away with another huge haul of medals and continuing Great Britain being the greatest boxing nation on earth. So he'll probably be on more money to stay. Now, Josh, you'll get big money from training Joshua, but he's generally been a one-fighter kind of guy. He had that relationship, obviously, with Carl. Does he want to give up what he's got for a heavyweight who potentially, like all heavyweights, is one punch away from being knocked out? Or does he want to stick training him, obviously getting paid for it, but not officially being paid for it, and still gets to get all the success of running the GB boys and girls?
McCracken's a bit like the mistress at the moment, isn't he? He's sort of waiting until the divorce comes through before he can come on the scene and announce himself properly.
He is, and like I said, you can tell that because I think, to be fair, I'm sure Sims does do work with Joshua, but it's quite apparent that there's no reason on earth. Joshua lives in Watford, or he lives south of Watford. You know, he can get to Essex very easily. Sims's gym is very accessible. There's no reason why, if Sims was his proper trainer, he wouldn't be there all the time. Like and I think in a way it's a bit disrespectful. I'm sure that Sims doesn't really care because he's getting to train a heavyweight for featherweight champion of the world, or one of them. But he must just think, you know what? I'm actually a really good trainer. I've had, Darren Barker. I've had good fighters come through this gym. Why shouldn't Joshua want to come here? Why is he still training with McCracken? But McCracken is a better coach than Sims is. So it makes sense in that regard for Anthony to keep doing what he's doing. But I think that the wall they're trying to pull over the art is a bit silly. Everyone knows what's going on.
Right. That's all the Facebook and Twitter questions we have for this week. Before we move on to Value of the Week, does anybody have anything they want to bring up? Anything you want to get off your chest? Anything that you might be a little bit ashamed of? Or
Nothing to be ashamed of, mate, but I just want to know what the panel think about, Povetkin getting supposedly passed clean by, let me get this right now, WADA. It's no VADA this time. WADA have actually kind of seemed to have made the final decision on it that his trace amounts, I need to try and get the actual article up. They've issued a statement anyway saying that he's been passed clean. Give me a second, see if I can get this up here.
Well, I'm no expert on this while you get it up, Andy, but I do not think that the Wilder Povetkin fight will ever happen now.
Yeah, I believe that as well, mate.
Not with the lawsuits between the two sides.
It just basically issued clarification that in the case of Alexander Povetkin, who failed a drugs test earlier this year, that the fight would be cancelled due to a test failure. The whole situation has been heated ever since. Povetkin tested was positive test for trace amounts of meldonium and submitted to 3 tests before that one, which all came back negative. So you don't know if it's maybe been a false positive or something like that, but you just wonder as well, with these lawsuits also kicking in, I think Rabinski, he's issued a $32 million lawsuit, whilst I think Wilder's basically put a lawsuit in for his purse money. But if that's the case, and as you say, Steve, we're never going to get this fight if these lawsuits are still in place.
No, and if it does get forced by whatever organisation, I mean, Wilder and Heyman or whoever's advising him, they can theoretically just drop the belt. And, they have the story, don't they? Well, I mean, it's dirty and they haven't proved anything and blah, blah, blah. And actually, while I'm on this subject, whenever Povetkin gets brought up, afterwards in the YouTube comments, there's a commenter, I think he's called Jay Hunter, and he always contests our discussions regarding Povetkin and whatever. So I'll invite you, Jay, to come on the pod if you want to discuss your point of view, and if you have any in-depth knowledge or anything, not being facetious here, I'm telling you, get the link, come on and tell us what you think, what you know, what information you have on this subject, and we're happy to talk to you, or put it in the YouTube comments or whatever, because I'm pretty much clueless about all these different drugs and what have you, and if you have any in-depth information on this, then by all means. Guys, anybody else have anything to say on this?
Nah, mate, I mean, just the fucking having to talk about this again, I actually just want to make my blood boil. I'm actually quite calm tonight. I'm not, too pumped up, shall we say, to speak boxing, but, I'm here. I just didn't want that to fuck my mood up, so.
You're going to have to take some PEDs to get your blood pressure down, Andy.
Yeah.
I have something to get off my chest that I'm sure none of the panelists or our listeners will care about, but this happened at the event I was at last night. It was after the TV broadcast. There were 2 more fights. Now, there was this one between the hometown guy from Reading named Eric Spring against James Robinson, a guy who's from my hometown. And Eric Spring was the hometown favorite. He was in there. His ratchet-ass wannabe thug fans were surrounding me, screaming at my guy from my hometown. But meanwhile, my guy's whooping his ass, and they're all like, "Easy work, easy work," while he's getting worked on the ropes. Well, they gave him a draw, so it was bullshit. James Robinson won that fight. Eric Spring lost that fight. I don't care if he's 3-4. He's not a bad fighter, and give him his due. No one else cares, but I did.
Thanks, Dave. That's the good thing about this podcast. We get to put things to rights like that. Things like Eric Spring and James Robinson and Lennox Clark, they do get a mention on here. We're not too big to go beyond these local fighters. So thanks very much for that, Dave.
Grassroots, baby, grassroots.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to move on to the Value of the Week. After the Value of the Week, if we've still got time, we might have a brief few words, I think, maybe on Frampton Santa Cruz while we're all looking to kill time. But we're going to go through Value of the Week first. I've got a hell of a lot. People have been sending them in, so thanks very much to everybody who's been sending them in. And if you guys have any, then keep hold of them till the end, and I will write them down as well. Also, at this time, I'd just like to say don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button on iTunes as well, and leave reviews, comments, likes, dislikes, whatever you want to do. We're into July now, so throughout the whole month of July, nothing less than 5 stars on iTunes is acceptable, so just remember that. Right, First value of the week came in from Paul Capner on Twitter at Calpy1983. He's nominated his boss at work, who was talking about how good Joshua is, and then he said he would like to see a Mayweather versus Joshua fight.
Fucking sad, man. Jesus fuck.
See,
he should just get fucking. He should get neutered for that. He should have been allowed to breed for making comments like that.
Right. Okay. Lee at Num Tapestry on Twitter. Can we get Kell Brook's career nominated for Value of the Week and then have him banned from being mentioned again till he's in a big fight?
Ken something, Steve? I think we should do that, like I did with the Pacquiao Mayweather situation. Just refuse to call him by their real name. Just call him like.
Yeah, but if we call bullshit on everybody in boxing at the moment, we'll have like a 10-minute show.
Yeah, I suppose, but we just refused to discuss Pacquiao Mayweather after a certain amount of time because the whole talk we felt was redundant. It's just a bit like fucking Kell Brook's career, isn't it? Redundant.
We can always talk. I think it's something we should go to the well more often with boxing history, because there's so much there, and there's a lot more there than what boxing is currently giving us these days. So we can always go to boxing history, perhaps next week when there's nothing to talk about.
Yep. If anybody has any suggestions, leave them in the YouTube comments. Whenever this YouTube video goes live, not in the chat, but on the actual comments, if you have any suggestions about any future topics or about any historical topics or anything you want broke down or discussed, then leave them in the YouTube comments below this video, and we'll certainly consider them. Right, Tony Nelson has nominated Box Nation for their latest YouTube video, Value of the Week, for a bit of search engine optimization going on, I think, here. They put up a video to try and show how good Liam Williams was, and they labelled it. It took Eubank Jr. 6 rounds. It took Liam Williams 2.
Oh, God. That was like Stephen Horvath. Stephen Horvath, I'm sure it is, mate. He's now since went on I think it was a 6-fight winning streak just now, picking up like the European second tier title or something. So he's on the way back, baby. Rematch with Eubank after he beats Golovkin.
Second nomination for Box Nation. Sorry, Box Nation. This is from, let me have a look, David Martin. He says, I'd like to nominate Box Nation. This week I rang up to cancel my subscription. They then said, are you sure? We have a great fight coming up with Cruiserweight King Terence Crawford. Fucking casuals.
King.
I remember back in the day, actually, whenever Setanta Sports were going, I think it was Setanta Sports, and I remember ringing up to try and get it cancelled. It might have been Sky anyway, and they said to me, oh, what sports do you like? And I said, I like a bit of football, darts, boxing, whatever. Oh, boxing? Yeah, we've got a great fight coming up soon. And then they named one of the Calzaghe fights. I can't remember if it was Tucker Pudwell or something like that, but they labelled like this really shit fight. Or he might have even named the wrong opponent or something. I ended up getting in a discussion going, no, that fight's not happening or blah, blah, blah. But they tried to woo me round by giving me an erroneous fight that wasn't even happening. So I think Box Nation have done something along the same line, so they get a nomination anyway from David Martin. Thanks for that, David. Right, let's have a look at this one. I'm not really sure of the ins and outs of that one, so sorry whoever's nominated. I've got the screen grab wrong. Right, Geordie McDonough has nominated Miles Shinkwin. He says, why is everything Canelo Smith why is everything about Canelo Smith have Canelo on the poster? Liam's the champion. He's being massively overlooked in this. Huge mistake, in my opinion.
Oh, God almighty.
He's going to do it.
I think
makes sense, though.
I think he'll come and probably have a go at it, but ultimately I think he'll just get like knocked out badly.
Do you think that they could sell the fight on the back of Liam Smith over there, Dave? Is everybody clamouring to see the fight in Smiths?
Absolutely not. I think they're selling it totally on Canelo's existence as a ginger Mexican who they have liked in the past. That's why I'm hoping that it'll fail.
Would I be unfair saying it's comparable to Kelly Pavlik, Gary Lockett, or Miguel Cotto, Michael James?
Yeah, it's like that, except Canelo's a bigger name than Kelly Pavlik. Right, Dan Grantham is nominating Sky. Sky haven't made a mistake for at least a week, so they're actually getting pretty consistent, but they're back on the bandwagon again this week.
They have put out an article saying that Jamie McDonnell is set to face WBA super belt holder Roshi Warren, and they upgraded Warren by saying that he was the Olympic champion. So well done, Roshi, on that gold medal there. Okay. Andy Murray. Andy Murray's getting nominated. Not sure who nominated him, but thanks anyway. He's got a picture of him with Carl Froch, and it says, "Awesome to meet Carl Froch after my match yesterday. Unbelievable career in the ring, and it's always great to compare sports, especially with one of the best. Thanks for coming along." And #champ. Adam wouldn't disagree with that. Carl was one of the
Neither would
best.
I. One of the best.
Christopher Lomax has nominated. I'm not sure who he's nominating for this actually. Does Anthony Joshua deserve to be Personality of the Year? Apparently Joshua has been put forward for Sports Personality of the Year, is that right?
What the fuck? He's even got a personality, man. Jesus Christ.
He was the bookie's favourite, but when Djokovic got knocked out, I think a lot of people will work on the first half of the year has been quite slow. None of the England players are going to get nominated, are they? So I think it will be Joshua. Joshua was high, but if Murray wins Wimbledon, and then there's always the Olympics. I think if Ennis wins a gold, then she'll get it. But I think Joshua needs to do an awful lot to win it. But he'll be top 10. He'll certainly be up there because people like him. That's the difference.
I think there's more chance, Paul, of the England players getting nominated for Bellew of the Week than Sports Personality. Right.
Joe Hart deserves Bellew of the Year. And Raheem Sterling, bastard. I won't go to football because I'll just rage.
No. Right, Michael Gearty, a long-time listener. Michael Gearty, thanks for listening. I forgot last week to nominate Ed Draper for saying that Martin Murray made the blueprint on beating Triple G.
Oh dear. I remember I heard that. Fucking hell.
Who's Ed Draper? Isn't he one of the
He's the host of the Toe to Toe podcast, mate.
I don't listen to that shite. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, so if you see you're not on my podcast list, you must be doing something wrong. So just bear that in mind, Mr. Ed Draper. Right. Rocco, why did you not call in anymore, Rocco? We missed you. He's nominated John Dennon. My mate John Dennon. John Dennon's actually a nice guy. If you ever met him, he is a good guy who likes his boxing. But no one is exempt from Bellew of the Week, including all of us, so he's going to have to go in. John Dennon on the latest Boxing News podcast, Dreary John Dennon said, Liam Smith has an exciting Mexican style.
I seen that comment, fucking hell.
Oh dear. Right, Rory McGonigal, friend of mine from Derry, respect to Rory there, he sent a good one in. He said, let me see, AJ deserves a belated nomination for Bellew of the Week next week. He said in an IFL interview recently that Wilder deserves to be number one because he has made the most title defences, and also that Fury is just ahead of him because Klitschko is better than the majority of his opponents, bar Gary Cornish. I can't see what Joshua opponents Klitschko isn't better than, to be honest. Let me. Really?
Jesus.
Fury is just ahead of him because Klitschko is better than the majority of his opponents.
Majority of AJ's opponents?
I'm assuming that's what he's saying, yeah? The majority.
Majority.
They're not better than all of them. The majority of them.
Put it this way, it says it all when Joseph Parker's got a better resume than what you have got when you're supposed to be a so-called world champion.
Right, nomination for the knowledge, Spencer Fearon. He liked one of my tweets actually. Spencer knows who's bringing the knowledge.
I've got one for him as well.
Scott Huyton has nominated him. He says, your words, Spencer, all heavyweights stay away from Ortiz, yet you canonise boxers of the past for fighting the best, Bellew of the Week. Yeah, that's true. Hasn't Spencer been committing these offences recently by saying that so-and-so should avoid so-and-so for business reasons, yet canonising the fighters of the past who didn't duck anybody?
Yep, I've also got another one for Spencer Fearon as well, mate. I'll leave it till you finish your list, though.
I have a long list, Andy. Right, Ganesh has sent one in. The depths people go to for an Eddie Hearn retweet. And this is from Walno. Walno tweeted directly to Eddie Hearn. I'm not a big boxing fan, I only like AJ. But Eddie Hearn for the England manager, or at least get him on the panel. We may win something. Give him the top job. Oh dear. And finally, sent in by Thomas and Josephson. This is TJ Cummins. This one might have been a troll comment, actually, but it's been nominated, so I'm going to add it in anyway. Curtis Woodhouse tweeted directly to Eddie Hearn. He said, "Stick my name on that list, Ed. I'm not sold on Triple G yet. You bank on points for me. Thumbs up."
Fuck.
So Woodhouse is getting a nomination for that.
That reminds me of...
Right,
Nick
Andy,
Mullen.
what have you got for us?
Right, first one I've got. I want
Who
to
is
give
it,
it to.
No, he was
Dave
just talking
saying
about it. The kid wins it for me, Nick Halling. He was nominated for Rebellion of the Week for
Oh,
some-
yes.
Wanker.
I didn't realise Nick Halling was
Go
in the
ahead, Andy,
Beatles.
Right, I've got two. I want to give this first one to Jordan Singleton. Jordan Singleton, as you know, he goes under the name of Bolo Punch on YouTube and stuff. But his comment to Leo Santa Cruz, actually, I thought was really funny. You know, Leo Santa Cruz basically tweeted out this, like, 1 month ago, I put on a show for my fans in New York, hashtag Frampton against Santa Cruz. Jordan Singleton, as we all know, is a big Frampton fan, just responded, "You're going to get your shitey wee pedo tash beat off your bake, your joyriding looking wee dick." So I'll say that again. "You're going to get your shitey wee pedo tash beat off your bake, your joyriding looking wee dick." I thought that was fucking brilliant. I was fucking poorless at that one. Spencer Fearon, now he'd tweeted out about 3 years ago that he spoke to Antonio Tarver on the phone and he's going to get him on Totty Toe podcast and stuff. And Tarver's apparently wanting to fight David Price or Dillian White in the UK. So I responded to him, I says, "Maybe he's banned for fighting in the UK, Spencer." And Spencer came back, being the knowledge that he is, says, "Why would that? Hey, sorry, why is that?" I says, "Well, he's got a failed drug test." Never responded to that one.
No.
And Sky Sports, now they released an article on Friday night. It was basically some comments of Danny Jacobs, basically saying that Billy Joe's basically ducking him. So quite a few years retweeted it and asked him and stuff, but you're basically saying Jacobs is allowed to say that Saunders is ducking him, but you know pull Jacobs up for saying that he can fight Golovkin next year. They deleted the article.
Who was it wrote the article again, Andy?
I never got to see who wrote the article, mate. Maybe it was Isaac Newton or fucking Isaac Robinson. I don't know what his name is, but fucking. Aye, it lasted like 10 minutes and got 10 down after people started asking, you know, well, if you're allowing him basically to say that Saunders is ducking him, why no asking Jacobs why he's ducking fucking Golovkin,
Yeah.
Got the chop.
Any others, Andy?
That's that, mate.
Dave, do you have any nominations this week? Eric Springs fans?
Yeah, Eric Springs fans. Good shout. Other than that, no.
I've got
People?
Okay, I've got a couple. Just trying to bring them up on here. Number one would be to the WBA, listener of the show and full-time scouser Aaron Seagar tweeted the WBA saying, in response to a tweet from them, said they're just a dog shit organisation now anyway, and the WBA favorited the tweet.
They favourite everything.
Second one, they favourite everything. The second one is on, if anyone's friends with Lee Connolly, the journeyman on Facebook, his Facebook's quite interesting because he often gets into like crazy vegan debates. But he's down to fight Glenn Foote, he's 17-1. And one of the guys on there was asking, who is this guy? Like, who is Glenn Foote? And I just thought this was brilliant for the spelling and combination of just weird facts. A guy called Brian Mattinson said, "I think he got beat by a boxer called Sam Egerton or something like that. Bradley Skett then beat Egerton for the British title or something like that, I think."
Just Facebook encapsulated.
Yeah, and I'll share it because it's brilliant. It's just the whole thread's fantastic. But it's just the spelling of Egerton and the I think British title I think, and then Skett instead of Skeet.
Predictive text a bastard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a killer. Honestly, it's worth adding. Lee Connolly will add you, and it's worth it just because there's just some fantastic vegan debates. Because he's been a vegan for about a week, and now he just shares photos of like animals being destroyed. Yeah. Oh, mate, he's gone full campaigner. And my final nomination is to a long-time pod member and now part-time worker, Kurt Ward, who gets a nomination for that photo, those trainers, that hat, those sunglasses, and for getting a small child to take the photo to make him look tall and imposing. So Kurt Ward, who's my final nomination.
I think I actually tweeted him last week. He was actually having a breakdown.
I haven't seen this.
I'll share it for everyone again. Dave Lee did it really well. Dave Lee said something like, how can you expect to share this photo on Twitter and not expect to receive abuse for it?
What, those red shoes?
Skinny jeans and shit as well, you know.
He looks like he's in better shape, though, at least.
He is. He does. He looks like he's lost a bit of weight, all that walking to the bus and walking from the bus to his job. He does look like he's lost a bit of weight. But yeah, the hat backwards and the luminous red trainers. It's a strong look from our Kurt, who we miss dearly and did his one pod every 4 months and got disappeared again.
At least he's outdoors.
Yeah, we do miss Kurt. Right, everybody made their nominations, yep? Okay, I should go through the list before we make our decisions. There's only 4 of us on, so it's not going to make much difference, but anyway. Right, Paul's Boss, Kel Brook, Box Nation, Miles Shinkwin, Sky, Andy Murray, the BBC, Ed Draper, John Dennon, AJ, Spencer Fearon, Walno, Curtis Woodhouse, Jordan Singleton, Eric Springs Fans, the WBA, Brian Mattinson, and Kurt Ward. Right, Andy, who are you going for?
Jordan Singleton, mate. I was absolutely poorless at that comment, and to be honest, I don't even think Leo Santa Cruz even blocked him for it. So fair play, mate.
Probably didn't understand it. Dave?
Kurt Ward.
Paul?
It's a tough one because there's been quite a few this week.
Steve will probably need to make an executive order here and just kind of basically hand out the title.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with what Steve directs because there's a good 3 or 4 I'd happily nominate evenly.
Well,
pressure's
there's a couple on the agenda. Spencer Fearon is always good, but I kind of like the Brian Mattinson one on your man. What is it, Conroy's page?
It's on Lee Connolly's page, Brian Mattison, for the Skett and Eggleston comments.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for Brian Mattison then. Happy enough for that, Paul?
Yeah, I'll Facebook him a photo of a dead cow, and I'll let him know.
So Brian Mattison's the Bellew of the Week award winner.
I have to say, Facebook comments in general are kind of an amazing place. Like, people on Twitter generally have to have some realm of intelligence to use Twitter, I think. I mean, there are some idiots on here, but Facebook is just where like everyone's on, and some of the absolutely stupid, shitty comments you get are amazing.
And I saw a funny one the other day, actually. I think a politician had put something up on a page, and someone wrote below, I can't remember what it was, he says, who listen to politicians anyway? They all a bunch of pedophiles.
Fuck's sake.
Oh man, it just gives a voice to everybody, doesn't it? It's a bit like this podcast, really. It gives a voice to people who probably shouldn't have one. Right, before we close out, Andy, we had a discussion before. Is there any boxing next week? Because there was supposed to be Fury, but other than that, my knowledge is exhausted.
Nothing, mate. I think the only card, well, it's not even got any relevance or anything like that, but it's ESPN's got another card on next week, obviously the PBC. I think the top of the bill was at Mario Barrios against that Devis Buchero, the guy who got knocked out of Stephen Smith, so not really much to write home about. It's a 12-rounder, but I don't know if it's a eliminator or any title on the line or anything like that, so as Dave says, maybe we'll need to start getting into the historical stuff again, just kind of bide the time, pass the time for next week, because next week will be my last week, as everyone knows.
Last week ever?
Possibly.
Say what? Oh dear. Well, thanks for letting us know live on air.
I'm gonna be going to Peru soon for.
For God's sake.
Sundays. I'll be back though, unless I die. But yeah.
So the good thing is, it just means that me and Steve can sit for an hour and a half and cover the Warsaw show that I'm going to next week, starring Lennox Clark.
I said I'd be here next week.
Oh, you'll get to enjoy that then. starring Lennox Clark, future middleweight world champion, and 10 at the minute. And Steve will appreciate this. There are currently 11 scheduled fights, and I'm playing the roulette bingo of how many of those fights actually happen. I'm going with 7, but you never know, because you can rock up on the night, you get given your bout sheet, and then there's that famous biro line through one of them. So we'll see. But yeah, the main thing, I couldn't count. I'm going there to see Big Lennox knock out some other completely overmatched guy for the 12th time in his career, because they're determined to not give him a decent fight, because he still needs to learn how to box. His lack of jab is quite impressive. However, he hits like a beast, and if they can teach him some basic boxing skills, he could go English level before he knocks out Golovkin in a round, but we'll see.
Another great staple of those small hall shows, Paul, I'm sure you'll know, is when you turn up and there's always one guy and his opponent has different people have a different opponent for him. Like the board have one opponent written down, the MC has another one, the promoter's telling you it's somebody different.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Or you'll see this fight's happening now, and then you expect that fight to come out. The MC goes to read it, and actually no, it's another fight that was meant to happen 3 fights down the bill, because someone's trainer can't do this, someone has to go early, or honestly, that's the beauty of small hall is literally it's the whole idea that certainly from an opponent's point of view, anything can happen, and it's always good when they get in get in some like Latvians or someone like that. Generally, to save money, they'll get 2 guys from the same gym, and it'll be the same trainer. And some of the quality is just one of them might be all right, but the other one would be a case of, have you got a super featherweight in your gym? Yeah, we do. And they'll bring him over, and then he'll fall over in 20 seconds. But I think there'll be a lot of that. There's a couple of guys. There's my favourite fight on the show. There's a guy, I forgot his name. I will have to learn it before Saturday. He's got an impressive record of one none, lost 1. So a steady start to his pro game. But he's in with a guy who's 1 none, lost 8. So I think there's a good chance he could go 1-1. But someone's O has got to go in this case. Someone has to win that fight, unless it's no more like it'll be a 4-round draw. But we'll see. But
you can always come up with classic promoter spiel, though, Paul, when they say, "Oh, this guy's pretty good. He's been in with so and so and so and so." Not to mention that he got knocked out in about 4 seconds.
Well, there's another, again, I forgot his name now, but there's a guy on there, another journeyman who's Troy Drovsdonis, I can't remember his name. He's fought over the UK loads of times. Again, he's lost like 60-odd fights. It's a proper classic small hall. There's not even like, the main events, sometimes you might get a central area or a southern area, something remotely competitive. And these promoters who do this show have given us that before. But no, this is none of that. This is just a bunch of A-sides, guys who sell tickets, and Big Len, who will go 12-0 against a guy who is 2-2, I think, or 3-2. This guy is, who was knocked out in Ireland by Virginder Singh, who fights the Asian Kerry Hope for that belt in a couple of weeks. Is that next week, or is that the week after? The Kerry Hope fight.
I really don't know, to be honest. Is that the one in India?
Yeah, when he's fighting Virginder. If anyone wants tickets for that fight, I looked the other day, you can get them from about £12. So if you happen to be in India, or you want to make a special trip over, it's like Vegas, going over there to watch Virginder Singh versus Kerry Hope, then you can do it on the cheap. You can get yourself some ringsides for about £90.
A little bit of an insight into the small hall world of boxing there. Before we close out, Andy, very briefly, coming up at the end of the month, I'll be there, hopefully in New York, if they let me in. Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, Early Instincts, who are you going for?
Frampton, mate, I've been quite clear on this for I don't know how long we've been discussing the fight, maybe 2 years or something, when both are still at 122. I just think Frampton's all-round ability, just to box off the back foot and move laterally. I just think he can, I would actually say Frampton's more comfortable fighting off the back foot, actually. So I think with Santa Cruz just coming in straight lines as he does, Frampton will basically outbox him. I just think he's going to have time. He's going to get kind of rocky. Santa Cruz, as we know, can be relentless. Just kind of lets the punches go sometimes. But all Frampton's really got to do, keep it at mid-distance. Let him come in, counter him out of distance and stuff. But I don't know if he's going to get a fair shake in the cards, because obviously Santa Cruz is Heyman's love child, so you got to kind of watch. So yeah, at the minute though, I'm sticking with Frampton. I think he will do the business, and the fact is he's also going up, was it 4 or 5 pounds? So that will obviously help him as well with stamina, etc.
No chance,
Yeah,
mate.
I'm thinking if his stamina and chin holds up, and it will be Santa Cruz's relentlessness that'll give him the most problems. But I think Frampton's ability to judge the range and get his shots off and find the angles and his underrated footwork will get him the fight. Dave, I don't know if you've ever been to the Barclays Centre. If so, what can I expect there on the night?
Oh, it's lovely. I was there for Quillen Lee and the Danny Garcia Lamont Peterson doubleheader. They have this whole thing. They'll have the whole thing set up for PBC with the catwalks, and they had Ray Leonard there, and they had all the. I actually saw Sean Porter there. The big names turn up in Brooklyn because it's easy to get to, and a lot of them are already there. So keep an eye out for interviews. Yeah, there'll be a lot of people there. And is that the main event? Or is there any more fights on the card?
Yeah, Mikey Garcia's on the undercard apparently against Elio Rojas.
Yeah. Okay. Not too inspiring, but at least you have that event. Hopefully, some of the Irish will be over there too to make some noise. But I think Leo Santa Cruz beats him. I think he's too fast. We saw Carl Frampton. I don't know where you get this idea that he's so good at judging range. I mean, he was getting nailed with straight right hands off of the slow as hell Scott Quigg late in the fight. And Leo Santa Cruz is
late in the fight, because that's what I'm saying. I think Frampton was cutting weight. I just think his stamina wasn't that great at the latter half of his reign at 122.
Okay, well, he went the 12 rounds okay, and Leo Santa Cruz obviously can go 12 rounds throwing the amount of punches Quigg threw in the entire fight every round. And at a greater velocity. So I just see that Santa Cruz is going to... I don't think he's going to stop him, because I think as Santa Cruz has moved up, his power's dwindled. But he's still fast, he's still accurate, and he still has a hell of a gas tank. So I see him winning wide on points.
What's Santa Cruz's best win, Paul?
There's not been very many. I'm just trying to think now.
Mares?
I suppose, but is it the best version of Mares? I think the biggest criticism of Santa Cruz is that he's, for one reason or another, he's never really nailed down a big fight. I think we talked about this before when I was saying that I'm actually a big fan of Santa Cruz's, and I will pick Santa Cruz to beat Frampton. But if Abner Mares, and it wasn't exactly a prime Mares, is his best win, it doesn't really say a huge amount for his resume. I just think that on talent alone, and then there's a reason why Golden Boy and the promoters and others who did at the time, threw so much money behind him, and he continually got the Mayweather undercard bills, he continually got these big shows, was because he had a bit of substance. I think I agree with Dave. I think he's faster. I think he's shown that he does 12 rounds very comfortably. Frampton did 8 rounds incredibly comfortably against a good fighter in Scott Quigg, if not a great fighter, because certainly he isn't, but he is solid. But then, he started to get caught and he started to tire. Yeah, it could have been the weight. He could have been a bit tight going in, but I'd like LSC. I think that he wins. I think he wins wide, but it's Frampton. He's made everything up until this point look easy enough, but when he came over and fought in America last time, he struggled, didn't he? He got dropped, went out and won the fight in the end, but he had a poor start. I think this is very much in LSC's territory. How well will Frampton fare fighting in New York? I'm not so sure, and I think I'll be back in Santa Cruz. But who's got the better wins on the resume? I'd probably say Frampton.
Oh, I think Santa Cruz is much better because of Mares alone, but then he's also got a decent resume just coming up through the rankings. None of them great names, but all of them, many of them solid, like Terrazas and Malinga, and who was that other guy he fought? Didn't he fight Mijares? Yeah, Mijares. Yeah.
Eric Morel, super flyweight champ at one point, I think.
Yep.
They're all done now, aren't they? Terrazas
Stephen
wasn't
Jaboy.
the guy who got beat.
Stefan
I
Jamoy at the
know.
time when Jamoy was actually kind of highly rated coming out of Belgium at that time as well.
Why is Santa Cruz's resume so weak? You know, when you asked me that question, I was having to think. Mahrez took up, but I was really struggling to think of names. I've just brought his record up, and he really hasn't fought a lot of anything, considering he's had 33 fights now, hasn't he? I mean, he's fought an old Martinez. In my opinion, even though his record was past his prime, Mahrez, there's not a massive amount on there, is he? Mahrez, like you say, but he's already been beaten 6 or 7 times. It's a pretty piss poor resume.
I think it's solid. I think that there just aren't that many names at those lower weights, but that he's run through some decent competition.
Right, thanks lads. That'll be my first foray abroad for a fight since 2004. Hopkins De La Hoya. Was that 2004, 2003? I can't remember.
2004.
Enjoy it anyway, mate.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Hopefully.
You haven't left the country since 2004.
Oh no, I have.
Oh, okay.
I was in
Just not
Cuba.
for
I
boxing.
was in Florida.
Are you going to meet Donnie?
Yeah, as long as I don't get mugged.
I would go to that fight if it was a better card too, but just for the one fight, not worth it.
Right, guys. Any word on our friend Dave, Mr. Vargas? No.
Jesse Vargas would like to talk with us, but we're still trying to work out his understanding of what Google Hangouts is.
Oh God!
So we might get him on another week.
See if you can get his phone number. We can maybe see if you get his phone number. We can speak to him on Skype and put it out next week if you want, or put it out as a midweek special or something.
Yeah.
Right, guys, that'll do for tonight. Thanks to everyone. We had good numbers as well listening, so thank you very much for everybody who listened in. For the people who also listen on iTunes and listen back and what have you. If there is anything, like I said earlier, that you want us to discuss, historical or current or any topics, then leave a comment below the YouTube channel once it goes once it does whatever it does after we've finished, and subscribe to iTunes, to YouTube, and leave a comment, and also like our Facebook page. Thank you to Andy, to Dave, to Adam Smith for coming on.
Oh, fuck, there he is. There he is.
He's a bumhole.
Right at the day.
As well.
Oh, I thought I was going to get to go to bed. Go on, Adam.
9:58, Adam. Fuck me.
Hey,
I've
you've got
just
1 minute.
messed that right,
1 minute
okay.
to spit it out.
Just Kel Brook's a bumhole, mate. Like, what's he doing? What is he doing with life?
He's enjoying life, mate. He's
Not
sitting
enjoying life. He's sitting at home, and then he comes out of retirement every 6 months, fights Frankie Gavin, and then goes back home, and then has a mandatory, and then he's wasted. What a waste! What a waste! You could have iced Amir Khan. You could have spanked him and finished his career, but yet you sit at home and you want AJ money, and you're not AJ. You ain't got the fans. You ain't got the talent, and fuming. Right, Steve, I'll let you close off, sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Adam Smith, Andy Patterson, Dave Loback, Paul Webb. We'll speak to you all again next week, guys. Thanks for listening. All the best.
Bye.
War Lennox Clark.